Hello and welcome to Tribe Choices at the Movies. My name is Kara Minix and today I'm going to be reviewing two newly released movies, The Intern and The Martian. This week on Tribe Choices at the Movies, we're going to be introducing a new rating scale. So we've never had a rating scale in the past, but now we're going to use a sort of star system, but I felt that 5 was not enough, so we're going to be using 10. It's going to be out of 10, and instead of stars, we're going to be using griffins, because that's our school mascot. So 1, 2, 3 griffins is just like a terrible movie. 4 to 5 is eh. 6 to 7 is like okay. It was pretty good. And 8 to 10 is great. Would recommend. Now the first movie that I saw was The Intern. This movie came out a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and I felt that I really had to go see this movie in theaters because it is the first movie since Pitch Perfect 2 that came out this summer, probably in like May, that was directed by a woman that was in wide release, which means it like came out in basically every theater in the US. So I felt, which is pretty sad, so I thought that I needed to go see it to support female directors so that, you know, more female directors will get big movies and blah, blah, blah. So this movie was directed by the same woman who directed a lot of other movies like Something's Gotta Give and things like that. It stars Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, and if you've seen the preview, you know, basically Anne Hathaway is like the CEO of this sort of like fashion startup website thing, and they decide to, for whatever reason, hire a bunch of senior citizen interns, and Robert De Niro, I guess, is like bored after he is retired, and so he gets the job and then becomes her assistant basically, and then they become friends and, you know, stuff happens. So I went into this movie expecting it to be mediocre, and it was like fine. I enjoyed it, I would say. Maybe fine is a bit too harsh of a word. I would definitely recommend it to sort of a casual moviegoer. If you are not into sort of like nice whatever movies, then you probably wouldn't like it. But if you just like to watch casual movies and don't really care about having a ton of drama or action or anything like that, then this is the perfect movie for you. It was really nice to see Anne Hathaway as a like independent woman who is this basically like CEO of this company who's struggling with work issues and as well as like personal issues. It was nice to see her. She had an established family and everything. The main conflict of the movie is that she's having issues at work. It wasn't just like two women fighting and they're gonna get married or whatever. It didn't feel like there was a lot of woman-on-woman drama. When there was, it was pointed out as like a bad thing, which was nice. However, for a movie about a woman and directed and written by a woman, it had very few female characters. There were a handful of female characters, but Anne Hathaway and her like main assistant woman were really the main two, and there were a good amount of characters. I guess Robert De Niro also has a love interest too, was there. I would have liked to have seen more women in it, especially since it was written by a woman. It was one of those movies that sort of had the like Three Stooges male characters. I'm getting frustrated with movies that have the Three Stooges characters and all three are men. Like you can, at this point, their gender doesn't matter at all. Most of the characters in the movie, their gender didn't matter. And so having all of the people that sort of had default genders be male felt really sad. I would have liked to have seen more funny women in it because there weren't a lot. It was like a humorous movie, but the women weren't the source of the humor most of the time. As far as racial diversity is concerned, it was not diverse at all. I can't think of a non-white character now that I'm thinking about it. Definitely not a super diverse movie. I thought overall that the movie was pretty funny. It was like a comedy movie. There were dramatic moments, but it definitely was a comedy. And I liked it. I thought it was fairly funny. I smiled twice and laughed once, which is pretty good because I don't really make facial expressions at all when I'm watching movies. So that was good. I was unhappy a little bit with some of the content of the movie. there are parts where they're talking about Robert De Niro or Anne Hathaway are talking about like chivalry and how chivalry is dead, and like, oh, men should carry around handkerchiefs so that they can comfort women when they cry, and I was like, not really about that at all. But the worst part was that there were 2 times where they made jokes about bipolar, which was not funny. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I really enjoyed it overall. Definitely would recommend to the casual moviegoer who just wants, to see a sort of lighthearted movie. I didn't, however, like the ending at all, and I'm not gonna like tell you the ending and spoil it, but at the end, Anne Hathaway's character sort of has like a choice to make, and I thought she made the wrong decision. As far as the quality of the actual filmmaking part, I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty. All of the set design was really cool. A lot of it takes place in the office building, which was really beautiful, and the streets that they filmed everything on, it takes place in New York, and it took Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro both live on streets of like townhouses that were beautiful. So it was always nice when they had outdoor scenes. Overall, I would give this movie 6 or 7 Griffins, 6.5 maybe. It was pretty good, and for people that don't really care about movies at all, who probably wouldn't be watching this, I would recommend it. But if you're really into like great cinematography and like really heart-wrenching plot and action and stuff like that, it wouldn't. It's sort of a popcorn movie. It's a nice casual movie. I don't regret seeing it, but if I hadn't seen it, I also wouldn't have really missed out on much. But if you can, I would definitely recommend seeing this movie in the theater while it's still out, just solely for the purpose of supporting female directors and writers. I also recently saw The Martian, which Matt Damon is the star of, and there's also a ton of other famous people in it. But basically, Matt Damon's character is an astronaut, and he gets stuck on Mars and has to figure out how to survive there while he's waiting for NASA to come back and get him, basically. This was the first sort of like space stranded type movie that I've seen. I didn't see Gravity or Interstellar, and it was different from what I expected, but I really, really liked it. It starts off right in the action. He pretty much immediately gets stuck on Mars, and then the rest of the time is him trying to figure out how to survive, and then the people on Earth trying to figure out how to get him back. I really enjoyed the movie overall. I thought it was really good, especially as a person coming from a like science background. I'm a quantitative biology major, and I thought it was really interesting, not so much from the like actual legit science that the character is performing, but just the sort of way of going about all of the things that he was doing. Like they talked a lot about sort of scientific problem solving, which I'm like really into, and I thought it was really cool the way he solves a lot of his problems. There weren't any like glaring errors in science that sort of took me out of the movie. I'm sure it's not perfect, but it was reasonable enough that I was like, oh, okay, like that could happen potentially. It was easy to suspend enough belief to believe what was happening. The movie was surprisingly diverse. The original group of people that group of astronauts that he's with, 2 out of the 6 people are women. And there are a lot of like diverse characters. There are some women scientists. There are definitely more men than women, but it's not a huge disparity like it normally is in a lot of movies. There were white people, black people, Asian people, Hispanic people. It was really surprisingly diverse, and I really appreciated that about it. I thought it was pretty funny too. Matt Damon is obviously like a pretty funny guy, and he did a really good job. I was concerned that it was gonna be boring with him just like stranded on Mars, but it was really pretty entertaining. Even him by himself, he would crack jokes and things. I thought one of the strongest aspects of this movie were the costumes, the spacesuits, and the clothes that the astronauts all wear while they're in space. I thought were really cool, and I don't know how accurate they are, but they were interesting to look at, and they seem to be pretty functional. I thought the cinematography overall was really good. All of the Earth stuff was really cool and interesting to look at, and the Mars stuff especially was really interesting, and I'm curious as to where they filmed it because it definitely looked like Mars. They did a very good job. with the cinematography and the sort of like, not set design, but the like background stuff when Matt Damon was walking around outside in Mars. They also did interesting things with the text on the screen. Every time a new character was introduced, they would put the name of the character and their job, which was really helpful as far as sort of exposition about each character, because there were a lot of characters. There were a ton of scientists. Pretty much every single character was a scientist. I think Kristen Wiig's character was like the only one that wasn't a scientist. And so there were a lot of people that were important to the story. And so by putting their name and just their job title, it really caught you up quickly, and the characters could immediately start doing things that were important, and you didn't have to figure out who they were and why they were there. It was definitely pretty predictable as far as the solution they end up using to try to save him. They have a bunch of different ideas that they attempt to do, but the final one you kind of see from a mile away. But it didn't make it any less stressful to watch, because even though you knew kind of what they were gonna do, it was still really possible that something could go horribly wrong and everyone would die. Now, you may find yourself about an hour and a half into this 2-hour movie thinking, oh wow, there's no romance in this. This is so great. You are wrong. My biggest grievance with this movie was that they put in completely out of the blue romance that was completely unnecessary. Now, you don't worry about Matt Damon, he's alone, whatever. But there are two other characters that they sort of randomly get together like 3/4 of the way through the movie. And it was very strange, and it felt forced. Like their chemistry was fine, whatever, but it was very out of the blue and completely unnecessary. It didn't help the plot at all, it didn't help the movie. It was just sexist, I think. It was like, oh, here's a woman. Oh look, she's not wearing a wedding ring. Guess we gotta get her with someone. It felt very it didn't feel like it was necessary to the movie. That could super easily, if you recut the movie, you could easily take out those 30 seconds. Literally, it was like 2 scenes, and they were 30 seconds total of this sort of romance thing that happened. And it would be the exact same movie, and it would have been fine. Overall, I definitely really liked this movie and would really, really recommend it, especially if you like science and if you are into space movies. It was cool. I would probably give this movie 8.5 Griffins. I thought it was really good, and I really liked it, except for the parts about love. Those are my reviews of The Intern and The Martian. I thought they were both pretty good. If you like, fun, fluffy movies, The Intern is the one for you. If you like science, if you're more hardcore into movies, The Martian was definitely really good. Make sure you catch these movies while you still can in the theaters. Thanks for watching.